Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I hope everyone had a great holiday season and that 2021 is off to a good start for all of you. This is going to become a regular monthly webinar. We are going to keep up with features, either having new features or features that we think are important for users to know about and be using on a monthly basis. So today we figured we would kick off the new year with one of our newest features to come out, which is multi-tech. A lot of you have been asking for it, and so we're really excited to be able to offer this feature. What I want to do is go over how you will get this feature enabled and how it really ultimately works. As you'll see throughout today's presentation, it's mostly a lot of back-end work, but I will dive into that for you. So as always, if this is your first webinar with us, welcome. If you've done a couple webinars before, you've seen this housekeeping slide. I just like to put this out there so that everybody sort of knows what's going on. So everybody is muted currently. So I apologize if you are trying to ask a question or anything. I cannot hear you at this time. We leave that everyone muted just so background noise is to a minimum. But with that said, though, I love questions. So please send any and all questions that you have in that questions box on the GoToWebinar dashboard or the control panel that you have over on the side of your screen. Drop any questions that you have into that area, and we will address those questions at the end of the presentation. So I kind of briefly mentioned this beforehand, but just to give everybody a little outline of what we are going to cover today. So I want to talk a little bit about why would you want to use the multi-tech feature, how to use schedule inspections to a multiple technicians. Also a very important feature to know how to use or function, I should say, with this feature being multi-tech. So I'm going to show you how you would schedule inspections to more than one technician. How this feature works on the iPad, I'm going to briefly go over that. I will not be showing the iPad portion because once we get to that part, I'll kind of explain to you. Not much is different on the iPad. And then how this feature works when inspections are sent back. I'm going to show you what happens if two technicians answers the same question, what that does and how you would resolve that conflict in the back end. And then most importantly, you might love this feature. You've been waiting for this feature, right? How do you get it enabled inside your instance? So I will just go over that with you at the end of the presentation. So I just wanted to start with, let's take a closer look. Before we jump into the product, I kind of want to go over, why would you want this feature? Most importantly is if you have those larger inspections where you need to send more than one technician out in the field, before you really weren't able to do that. Prior to this multi-tech feature being available, it just really wasn't it wasn't an option on the inspection side. Now, if you were using or are using our service module, multi-tech sort of came out when that service module was ready. So inspections, it's just getting there now. So biggest reason why you, of course, would want to use this feature is you need to dispatch out more than one technician to an inspection. The nice thing about this feature is that you basically assign a lead technician, and then from there, it's up to everybody to sort of determine what everyone is going to be working on. But there will be those occurrences where there may be some miscommunication, right? It happens. Everybody's human. It just happens. And there might be someone who answers the same question as another technician, and so we've taken that into account. So like I said, biggest reason why you'd want to use this feature, of course, you need multiple people on the same inspection. So I'm actually going to jump out of the presentation here for a second and just jump into the back end of InspectPoint. So on here, I have our test environment. And what I'm going to do is start off by scheduling a one-time inspection to two technicians. So I would start from my buildings screen here, and let me just get my little go-to webinar control panel out of the way there. And I am going to find the building that I would like to schedule the inspection for. I'm going to go to the building, I'm going to click inspections, and I'm going to create a one-time inspection. Now, while I'm creating this one-time inspection, I have the ability to add the additional technician right then and there. Once I'm done creating this, I'll just show you what it would look like if you're scheduling an inspection from an inspection series or schedule. So an inspection that's in that pending status. I'll show you how you would add the additional tech then. So I'm coming through here. I'm saying the type of inspection, right? I'm setting the frequency. I'm saying, okay, I'm going to be the lead technician on this one. But right underneath it, once we enable that multi-tech feature inside your instance, you'll start seeing the ability for you to add tech. So this is adding those additional technicians that you want. So in this case, I'm going to need Brittany on this with me. And just for ease, I'm just going to make it a simple inspection, an annual, just more wet and dry inspection. And I'm going to go ahead and click save. So now I am going to only see one technician listed here in this assigned tech field. This, for all intensive purposes, is your lead technician. If I scroll down a little bit farther, I will now see my team area. So who is my team of technicians that's going out into the field to perform this inspection? I am listed as the lead tech. You have no way to remove my name here. You would reset that up top. But if I needed to remove Brittany at any time, I could just click that delete button. It will once again ask me and confirm, are you sure you want to do that? If you confirm that is in fact what you want, it's going to cancel the inspection. And as long as Brittany has not started that inspection, when she pulls to refresh on her iPad, she won't see it listed there. So it's just a timing thing to keep in place. If you do schedule one out, just make sure the secondary technician hasn't started it yet, so they don't see it on their iPad anymore. If at any point I needed to add additional technicians, I can always come up into the edit button. So this is how you would get to those inspections if you needed to edit a pending inspection. You could click edit and you'll scroll down and then you'll see the add tech button. So if we wanted to do that from the inspections tab, finding those pending inspections that are due this month, we'll just go ahead and to the end of the month there, change it to the 21st. And then we can come in, click on that ID. And while we're in here, we're going to click edit. We'll set our lead technician. And then we'll set our secondary technician. Once we have that, I'm going to go ahead and click update. I have the ability, since this is part of a series, to say, hey, this is actually the duo that I want on every one of these inspections. So I can say, hey, on all annual inspections, I do need this team to go out. So I am going to update that. And then I'm going to schedule that inspection. And once again, because it's part of a series, it's going to ask, do you want to update everything to scheduled or just this one inspection? Since we're only editing this one inspection and we only want to dispatch this one, this is when we're going to say we only really want to do this one. So that is all you have to do in the back end to dispatch out more than one technician. So whether it is creating it from a one-time where it's right there underneath when you're selecting your main technician, or should you be updating from a series or a schedule and you're clicking edit to set the date and time that you want, maybe you're setting your lead technician, but from this edit screen on the inspection is where you can add your additional technician or technicians if needed. Now, once it is scheduled and out on, at this time it's scheduled, from the iPad point of view, the technician sees nothing different. So out in the field, the technician will still open up their inspection. They'll still see it listed. Both technicians would actually see it listed on their iPads. So in the case of the inspection that I first did, where it was Brittany and myself, I would log into my iPad and I would see an annual NFPA 25 inspection for a wet and a dry system. And Brittany would open up her iPad and she would see a full inspection at that building, an annual 25 inspection for a wet and a dry system. we would both be able to start our inspection, answer the questions, and submit the inspection back just as normal. Now, one thing to just keep in mind is if your instance has a blank default, meaning none of your questions are set to yes or NA or anything, you have a blank default. If your technician is doing, and I guess if the technicians are splitting the inspection out and they're only doing small portions of the inspection, and they're only doing that one little section, when they submit the inspection back to the office, they will get a message that says not all of the information is filled in. And that is by default because there's blank information. They can go ahead and say yes because the remaining information is going to be sent back by the additional technician. So once you schedule, both technicians see the inspection, and then once they arrive on site, the lead technician can say, hey, do this section, I'm going to do this. And when it comes back to the office, it's going to come back as a single inspection. So what I just flipped to on my screen without letting you guys know is an inspection that's been sent back to the office. So the inspection came back, as we know from dispatching this out into the field. It was Brittany and I that were on this inspection. Brittany did her part, I did my part, we both submitted back. Now, in the very beginning, I mentioned that conflicts might arise, right? There may be some miscommunication in the field as to what questions are supposed to be answered by what technician. For the most part, though, those questions should be answered the same way, right? So if it's a yes, no, NA, and it's not deficient, then both of the answers should be yes, and it necessarily won't trigger back a conflict. In that case, the answers are both the same, so we would say, hey, it's non-deficient. In this case, though, in this example that I'm about to show you, on one of the inspection questions, I flagged the question as deficient, but Brittany flagged the question as non-deficient. So on the top of the inspection, we're seeing that the inspection contains conflicts due to multiple technicians. And if you see that message, like I said, it's because one or two or however many questions has differing answers. And we want you, as the user in the back end, to decide what answer should be the correct answer. So if you see this message once the multi-tech feature is enabled inside of your instance, you would click here and click the click here, and it would show you all of the conflicts. Now in this case, it's saying, hey, on the general form, Jennifer answered this question, is the FDC plainly visible, and answered it no. Brittany, on the same date and around the same time, answered is the FDC plainly visible as yes. We want you to decide what is the correct answer. If you do not resolve the conflicts in the back end, it will still allow you to generate the report, but we will always take the last answer that was submitted back. So if we did not resolve this issue, Brittany was the last one to answer the question and send it back. So therefore, we would display on the report that it is not deficient, even though the other technician said that it was a no. So it is important that if you see any conflicts when you have the multi-tech feature enabled, that you always go in, resolve the issues, and you decide what answer should appear for that question in the back end and then also on the report. In this case, the actually is deficient, so I am going to switch it back to the answer that I did. And the only reason why my answer is not selected is because I was the first one to submit back. So by default, like I said, it always goes back to the last answer that was submitted back. Maybe something changed before the first submission. The second technician saw something a little bit different. So I am going to click resolve. And when I do that, I'm going to go back to my inspection, and I no longer see that there's any conflicts because I've resolved those conflicts. At this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to generate that full report. Really, as you can see while this report is generating, not a whole lot is different by enabling this multi-tech feature. Biggest thing is, of course, editing, right? You got to get the second technician on there. So there is that little bit of additional editing that needs to take place just to get the secondary technician on there, or I should say if there's 4 techs, getting all 4 technicians on there. And then in the back end, really the only time anything may look different is once again if there's a conflict with the answers. And we always just like to present that to you guys so that you're aware of those issues and you have the control to make those adjustments if needed. Now I am going to go to the reports page and I am going to just download this report to sort of show you what it looks like. One thing that's going to be a little bit different is the technician's name will not appear in the header anymore. That's because just due to sizing, we want to make sure that all of the information regarding the building and your company information is still there. With that said though, if we scroll to the bottom of the inspection, and this one's probably not the best example, so I'm going to actually go back in and find one more sample for you. So say I came in and I did this inspection. I did this test yesterday. This is a multi-tech inspection here. So I'm going to scroll all the way down. I apologize that you guys have to watch me scroll all the way through this. But down at the bottom, we will show the technician's signature and names of all of the technicians that were on the inspection. So Brittany submitted her signature and I submit my signature. That's how we will let everybody know who was working on the inspection. So like I said, if you're doing multi-tech and all of a sudden you generate the report and you're like, oh my goodness, the name's not in the header anymore. Who's going to know how I did my inspection? It will now appear just down in that signature area. So that way we can display both the signature and the technician's name and the date that they received that signature. So if there are date discrepancies, so one technician went on one day and the other one went on the other day, it will reflect the date in which they submitted back the inspection. So there might be dates that are a little different there, and that, like I said, it's just because it's going to reflect when they submitted the inspection back to the office. We are working on ways, if it is something that you want to be able to have like a summary of this is what this technician worked on versus what this technician worked on. That is in the works. But right now, we are at least displaying the technician's name on the annual or on the inspection report in the signature area. So that is essentially the multi-tech feature. I think when we think new feature, it's going to be all these crazy new things. And we tried to make this really simple because at the end of the day, it's the same inspection. You just need another body or just a couple of bodies out there in the field to really be able to get this inspection done in a timely manner. Now you're able to do that. And now you're able to reflect that there's been more than one technician working on this inspection. And then, like I said, at the end of the day, when conflicts occur, you are notified in the back end that conflicts are occurring, and you have the ability to resolve those conflicts. So, like I said, you are aware of that situation. Now, I know that was fast, and we kind of went through that. I am seeing some questions already, but at this time, I'm going to start taking some questions from people. If you have any questions that pop up, just put them into that questions box so we can, oh my goodness, I love this. I have so many questions. So I am going to just start with them, throw those questions in the, like I said, in the questions box, and I am just going to try to get through as many of these as I can. If I do not get to your question between the allotted time, or if you have to drop off at any point, I did book this for an hour, but I try to keep it to a half hour. So if you do have to drop off, like I said, you'll get a recording of this and you can listen to the answers there, or I can follow up with you in email. All right, I'm going to jump into the questions. So Will multi-tech work on work orders as well? So good question. Work orders currently has multi-tech. So if you've been using the service module and you're creating out those work orders, when you create the service visit, when you create the work order, each of those visits is technically a new multi-tech. So you're saying, this person, this visit is for this person, this visit is for this person, and you can have multiple people working on a single work order. And then as those texts are submitting back, it's updating that single work order. So the service module already has the multi-tech feature built into it through service visits and being able to dispatch out those multiple service visits. Never mind. It was resolved. Somebody had issues with the audio. So when an inspection is complete and sent back to the office, will it show as complete on both users' iPads? So good question. So it's going to show as complete once that particular technician submits back the inspection. So they're essentially both getting an inspection on their iPad. They will not see when the other technician submitted back their inspection. So it'll basically function like a standalone inspection out there. And when they complete it, they'll see it as complete on their iPad, but they won't necessarily see the completion of the inspection done by the other technician. We had a question about Android capabilities. At this time, the Android is not on our roadmap. We've, gone with Apple and iOS, from a development standpoint and also from a product support standpoint. It helps us make sure that we can, update the code and we can support everybody as best as we can. When we add the different layers of devices that are out there into it, it can muddy the waters a little bit. So at this time, Android is not on our roadmap, but if anything changes, we'll definitely let you know on that one. Next question is, what does it do with detail notes for deficiencies if both enter notes? That's a great question. You would want to select. So whatever answer you select is going to be the answer that shows. So that might cause a little bit of an issue there, especially if both that's actually, sorry, I'm thinking through this in my head right now, so I'm like, sorry if it's a little all over the place, but that's a good one because I'm just thinking about it in regards to if two technicians are out there, they both identify the same answer as no, but they write different notes. I think that would have to be internal. We would display on the report the last answer that was submitted back, and I believe that's the one that would be recorded in the back end as the deficiency. But as I'm talking through this, it's something that I want to look into a little bit further. So I will follow up with you on that question. If they both enter notes, it's both marking it deficient, but the notes differ. Will you have the option to choose which one? So it's a very good question, and I just want to follow up with you on that one. If different dates show multiple customer signature by date, yeah, so all the signatures would be captured on there, and because the signatures are coming from different iPads, if the customer is signing on both, it should appear on both as well because it's coming from the different devices. I'm sure users have noticed too that if you collect the signature and then you also collect it again, you're going to see, hey, you've already collected this, but you have the ability to collect it again. One thing to keep in mind too is, say one technician submits back the day before and the second technician hasn't started their part of the inspection. If they complete the inspection, they're going to see that there might already be a customer signature because that part's been sent back. but it will display any signatures as they come back. Will the signature include the certifications? Let me check on that. It should appear below their name, but let me check on that. Especially if you have that information and you want it to appear in the header. Let me just make sure that that's appearing in the signature block as well, because I do know that it's important to a lot of people that the technician certification information appear. Oh, this is a good one. So this is where it can get a little tricky. So if a backflow is on a multi-tech inspection, will the name of the tech who tested it go on the report or both? Would it be better to make backflows a separate dispatch? So it would and should appear that you, okay, take this back a step. It's hard to have two technicians working on a backflow because backflows function a little bit different than our system questions do. But let's just say an inspection has two wet systems and two backflows. One tech's working on the systems and the other technician's working on the backflows. It should display on the report the signature on, I should say, it should show on the backflow report the signature of the technician who completed the backflow inspection. And then on the system inspections, it's going to display the inspection signature for that technician. So it should differentiate. If we turn this feature on and it's not doing that, you would just want to let us know right away, so that way we can have it be the distinction be this technician did this part, but the backflow inspection should only show the signature for the person who performed that backflow inspection. Good question. So this came up too. So what is the difference between a full report and a joint commission report? So when I was, this will actually kind of be, I think, the next webinar that we do. So I guess a little sneak peek. The joint commission, the complete generate joint commission report versus the generate full report is that giant button that says generate joint commission is our new joint commission reporting. So we have a version 3. It's been put together from a lot of input from a lot of our power users who do a lot of joint commission inspections, as well as working closely with joint commission as well as to requirements and working as far as hospitals go as to what they get feedback. So long story short, that giant button is not enabled in everyone's instance, but that is how you would get our latest and greatest Joint Commission reporting, which we're calling version 3. If that's something you do Joint Commission reporting and you would like that version 3 turned on, just send me an email and we can turn it on for you. And then I'll do a webinar on that shortly on just the Joint Commission reporting, what it looks like and the differences there for you. Okay, this good question. It kind of goes back to the other question too about what if they answer the same information. They answer the same question the same way, but the notes differ. So this one was, will there also be a conflict if both technicians make internal notes on the same inspection question? I just want to double check on that. And actually, what I can do is, if you bear with me, I could even do a quick little test here. So I am going to go back to this inspection. And let's just say I'm going to come back in on this one inspection on my phone. Now you can't see what I am doing, but what I am going to do is just in my completed, find an answer that just says, I'll just do a yes answer. Or actually, you know what? Let's stick with our deficiencies, right? Why not? So I'm going to mark this as no, so there'll no longer be a conflict, right? Because I am answering the same thing. I'm going to go test note from Brittany, save, and then I am going to go onto the iPad under which I am logged in as, and I'm going to say test note from Jennifer. So it just differs a little bit. I'm going to send my inspection back from logged in as Brittany. And I'm going to send my inspection back logged in as me from my other device. And making sure I'm on 2 different devices so I don't get any complication there. And when I refresh my screen here, because the answers are the same, it's not going to show that, but let me just see. I can always come back into this area here. And it shows the last note sent back. So there's the answer to that one. We just did a little testing live on the webinar. So it's gonna show, because the answer is the same, it will take the note from the last submission back. If we think that that will be any sort of issue, just let me know, because we can definitely take that back and see about if there's a way to differentiate that. But because the answers are the same, there's no conflict as the way conflict is being flagged in the back end of Inspect Point currently, that would say, hey, you need to review this. So let us take a look at that on our end, because it does seem, like I said, you would want, and from the multiple kind of questions on this, that you'd want to know, did they answer it the same way? And then this is sort of the same question too. How do deficiency notes work with multiple texts leaving a note on the same question? So as we just sort of saw, right, I marked a question deficient, Brittany marked a question deficient, she added a note, I added a note, her inspection went back first, my inspection went back second, and my note was what appears because it's the last submission back from the iPad is what's recorded in the back end. So another question is, so if an inspection is available to 2 technicians and one technician does the entire inspection, does it clear from both iPads when it's sent back? So good question. In this case, no, it will not remove itself from the second technician's iPad. So if it's submitted out and dispatched out to technician 1 and technician 2, and technician 1 performs that entire inspection, it will not remove from technician 2. If that were the case, what technician 2 would want to do is just swipe left on that to remove it from the iPad. It's the only way that they'd be able to go at that point. And that's mostly because that inspection lives on that particular device. And because it was dispatched on both, like I said, the only way to get it off Tech 2, if they actually don't do it, is to swipe left to delete it from their iPad. Once a tech starts an inspection, can another tech be added after that point? They should be able to be added at any point. That second technician would just have to pull to refresh, and they should be able to see the new inspection on there. There may have to be some configuration as far as switching the inspection back to back to scheduled. So we may have to figure that function out, because say the status isn't started because that one technician has technically started the inspection, you may have to switch the inspection back to scheduled, so that the second technician can pull to refresh to load the inspection onto their iPad. So if possible, it's best to try to dispatch both at the same time, but once again, real world scenarios, everything is not perfect, and you might have to do something after the fact, right? Things change, and so you just might have to make that adjustment so it triggers onto the iPad. Another question is, do the technicians need to submit back the inspection at the same time and day? No. Great question. Technicians can submit back when they're done with their part. It's just once the inspection is complete, it's going to come back to the office, and it'll be there. So they do not have to submit back on the same day and time. Will this feature work if you have more than one type of inspection on an inspection? So a fire alarm and a sprinkler, and there's two different technicians. This is a great question. It shouldn't be a problem. So if you have your fire alarm tech and you've got your sprinkler tech out there, you should be able to dispatch to both technicians. Your alarm guy takes your alarm, your sprinkler takes your sprinkler. They submit back their portion, and it should reflect that. Now, the only thing is it's not going to say, hey, this is the guy who did the alarm and this is the guy who did the sprinkler. It'll just show their signatures at the bottom. But yeah, it should work that you can dispatch it out, and the technicians designate and take what they need in the field. Another question is, are there going to be issues with multi-tech when resolving deficiencies? For instance, if I schedule a fire extinguisher inspection to two techs because of the quantity and they both perform corrective action, will both sets of B information be recorded, or is that going to trigger conflict on the inspection? So these are great. This definitely seems to be a big area here. And it's great because I think this is something for us to really think about. As we saw, if they both answer the question with the same response, but the notes differ, but the answer is the same, it will not trigger that conflict. I think just based on the fact that there's these questions, I'm going to take it back to the team that if there is notes, I think we need to take that into account as well as what would be considered a conflict. Especially if the notes are coming back from both people, it's very unlikely that the notes would be exactly the same. And so it should trigger a conflict. It does not do that currently, but I will take that back to the team. It's very good feedback that we're receiving right now on that. Another question, if you use this feature, the intention is that each technician would be assigned to a specific part of the inspection, correct? Would you not have the technicians perform the same part of the inspection? That is definitely an internal process. It might just make it difficult to have them work on the same section. The intent of it is to have it so that, this guy takes this part or this guy and gal takes that part, and then that when it comes back, they're able to, that's when you get the complete and report. So yes, I guess the intention is that everybody is doing a different part, and then that's then, creating the complete and finalized report. There's so many great questions in here. I would just like to thank all of you for this. I hope that everyone's finding these questions and answer portion helpful, but these are great questions. I've never had so many questions, so I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a little jazzed up. I'm loving this. So if two techs do a visual inspection and both write painted heads in different rooms, so this is another one of those things. I am definitely going to be taking this back to the team. Because once again, if the techs do an inspection, they answer that same question, it's gonna just send back to the office the last submission. And so let me talk to the team. How do we take into account? Yes, it's the same answer, but there's notes. If the notes are the same, it's a very easy conflict resolution on your end, right? But very good point. We're definitely going to take a look at that right after this. So this is a good question too. So if one technician does the whole inspection and the other tech who was assigned deletes it off their inspection, isn't that going to delete the completed inspection as well? It should not. So the completed inspection has already been submitted back to the office by one of the technicians. Another thing that they could do, because I take that back too, because it will change the status in the backend to deleted by technician. So that might confuse some things as well. So this is a very good point. What I would recommend is actually swipe left and mark it complete. It'll just move it to the completed tab. You're not going to lose anything. It's just going to say it's complete. It's not sending anything back to the office by you doing that, but you could always just swipe left and move it to complete. That's not going to change the status in the back end. And that's a really good point. It will change the status in the back end to deleted by technician if the technician does that. It should not, though, remove the inspection from the back end. And actually, let's do a test. I am going to, on my iPad, and let me just move, get this GoToMeeting out of the way. I am going to swipe left now and delete. And when I refresh, it's still going to show waiting review. It could be because that was also the last submission that I did, but I can also try to do this and click edit and maybe add another technician here. I just don't know his login. But yeah, at the end of the day, it shouldn't delete because you still have inspection information back from at least one of the iPads. Let me do another test on that though, and actually let me see if I can just log in as that technician now. I believe I know the password and login for that, and I do. Good. I'm going to pull to refresh. This is an answer to one of those other questions. The inspection is in waiting review. I pulled to refresh. That third technician I just added, can't see it. I'm pulling to refresh, can't see it. I need to move it back to scheduled. Pull to refresh. I'm going to load onto the iPad for that technician. And then if I'm going to delete it off, it's not going to change. It's not going to change it, but let me do a better test, not when we're live on here, so I can make sure that function's working correctly. If tech 1 completed the full report, then tech 2 completes an inspection with no answers and is the last to submit, will it show as conflicts or override the first tech's answers? It shouldn't. It's a good one. So if you have a default on, that's a very good point. If you have the default on and say all your answers default to yes, and then the first technician submitted back and changed that one yes to a no, when that second technician submitted back, that would trigger a conflict. It wouldn't, because that answer is different than the first submission. So if the answer is different, it would trigger the conflict once they submit back. This is a great question. When should this feature be live? It is ready to go. So that's one thing is, how do you get this feature enabled? Great question. All you have to do is email me or email support. So if you email support@inspectpoint.com or you email Jennifer@inspectpoint.com, best is to go through support. Support can just enable this feature for you. Once it's enabled, all you have to do is not really anything. You might just have to refresh your screen so you see the option in the back end, and then you can start adding additional technicians. You may want to have your technicians log out and log back in. It's probably not required. I just always like to be better safe than sorry. It's just an additional step to make sure that everything is syncing correctly. So really the biggest thing you'll have to do is just let us know, and then have your techs log in and log back out just for just as a peace of mind to make sure it's all going well. This is another one. Will the Nfpa section still be listed at the top of the report if there are two different types of inspections, Nfpa 25 and Nfpa 17 or 72? Yeah, it should. It's still, for all intents and purposes, if that inspection, so say you are dispatching out, right, a sprinkler and a fire alarm. If even before when you were doing that, it's going to always show whatever is on that inspection. So we do have multiple times, even prior to multi-tech. Say, you had one technician that could do multiple different inspection types out in the field, right? As if that inspection contained 2 different types, that would list at the top. It would say the frequency of it and then the inspection type that it is. So if it's a 72 and a 25, it's going to show that at the top in the header. Great. Love the concept. Thank you for that. And then once again, just a couple more questions about how do you enable this. So once again, if you want this enabled, just email support@inspectpoint.com. Say, hey, I really want that multi-tech feature, and we can get that enabled for you. It's just a little quick add of the button in the admin area on our end, and then once that's enabled, once again, I would just have your techs log in, log back out, just as a safety to sync everything back up with the iPad so they can start to see this in the back end. Good question. I didn't even think about this. One question is would it be the same for the recommendations section? So that's a very good question that I will want to double check on. I would test that live, but I deleted my inspection from the iPad when testing the other inspection. And so now I can't test that because I don't have the same inspection on the 2 devices anymore. So as we're seeing live right now, once you delete an inspection, right, you can't get it back. So let me follow up with you guys on that one as well, with the recommendations. And how that would work. If you have 2 sets of recommendations, it's definitely not going to trigger a conflict because there's no way for it to trigger a conflict because there isn't that yes or no answer to show, hey, there's a conflict, but I don't know what it would do as far as recommendations. So let me test that. Same thing with site photos. The site photos shouldn't, because there's no way that those are just totally free form. You can take as many of those as you want. And there's no way for us to know because they live in a section on the report. So site photos is probably going to function a little different. There shouldn't be like, oh, this person did this versus another one. But once again, I'll test that. More concerned about recommendations right now. And if multiple recommendations are there, what would appear? So yeah. That's another question too about photos. So if different photos are attached, will it show all of them from the tech? That, as we saw sort of with the notes and it not showing the conflict and only showing the last one submitted back, it's my gut that then if it's associated with a question and there's a photo and a note associated with it, it's going to take the last submission. So the photo and the note from the last submission if it's associated with a question. Site photos, I definitely want to take a look at because I don't think that would cause a conflict in any way. I think they would all show. I think the issue we need to look at is if there's photos attached to the same question, deficient or not deficient, it's only going to show photos and notes from the last submission. And then, so another thing, would it only keep the last submitted photos? Like I said, I want to check on that for site photos, but as far as associated with the questions, it's going to end up being last submission. And then in a situation where one tech has a default set to NA for questions, will each question he was not able to answer cause a conflict? So that's a good question. So right now, all of your technicians should have the same default across all of their iPads. If they don't have that same default across all of their iPads, then it's probably because there was a request made to the support to change the default and a technician hasn't logged in and logged out to sync with that adjustment. If there's conflicts, and like I said, in those default questions, you're going to want to look into that to right away. You're going to want your tech to log in and log back out because it should be uniform across all of your techs. However, if there is a default across all your techs and one tech answers yes and one tech changes it to NA, that will trigger a conflict because the answers do not match. Same question, different answers. We want you to tell us what needs to display. Woo! That was good. If there are any more questions, feel free to drop them in. Like I said, I've given the support crew a heads up that we may start getting some support tickets after this about getting this multi-tech feature enabled. So please just, like I said, email support@unspecpoint.com, and then we are just going to, as those tickets come in, they're going to come into a queue, and we're just going to get back to you guys as they come in and as we're definitely able to get this feature enabled. If any questions come up after the fact, just let me know. I'm going to put my contact information up here, so if you are unaware of what that is, feel free to email me. If I am in, a lot of meetings, back-to-back meetings, and I'm not going to be able to get back to you in a timely manner, I will forward your email to our support channel so someone there can get back to you a lot sooner than I can. So if it gets forwarded to support, don't be offended. It just means I want someone to get back to you, and I'm just not going to be able to get back to you in a very timely manner. So if you have questions, please feel free to email me after the fact. You will receive a recording of this webinar. I do have it triggered to go tomorrow. And why I want that is because I had a feeling there was going to be questions that came up from this and a little bit of testing that I might need to do on my end. So if you've done one of our webinars before, you may have seen that the webinar recording email is like, hey, thanks for attending. Here's a link to the, down below is the recording. This one's going to be a little bit beefed up a little bit. I want to check in on those recommendations. I want to check in with the team. And in that follow-up email to everybody, I want to have answers to those. So please do bear with me. It is going to take a day for this recording to get to you. But I purposely have baked in that time so that I can provide you some true follow-up to this webinar along with the recording. Let me just take one more little look at the questions area here and see if we have any more that have come in. Let me see, where did my little questions area go? Let me escape out of this presentation there and then see if any more have come in. Oh, another question. So can a second technician be attached to a partial inspection? So yes, they should be able to be added after the fact. Like I said, this is something I want to just check in on. It'll be part of that follow-up. So you may just have to change the inspection back to scheduled, because remember, in order for an inspection to load onto an iPad, you have to have the inspection be in scheduled. But I will follow up with you guys on that one. You should be able to dispatch out a second technician. Especially, we get a lot of questions about this on the support channel. Hey, there's been an emergency. This technician has to leave. Can I dispatch out the same inspection to a technician? And prior to multi-tech, unfortunately, you were unable to do that. Now you should be able to have that first technician submit back their inspection part. The second technician can start their part of the inspection, submit back, and it should complete one inspection report. And then will the second technician that is dispatched on a partial, will they see the answers from the first tech? I do not believe so, because they're coming from first. The only time, I take that back, the only time they would see an answer, because remember, for all intents and purposes, it's a fresh inspection. And when we do new inspections, the answers from previous inspections don't show up. But with the exception of that deficiency icon, right? So should a technician submit back an inspection, first technician submit back their partial part of the inspection, and they flag something as deficient, that deficiency icon will show up on that question, because an inspection's come back and now that's an open deficiency on there. So if anything's deficient, the answer will still be yes, just like it would on any other inspection, but the deficiency icon would appear there to indicate that the last submission back from this building marked that as deficient. That I did test yesterday, just in an attempt to see what might happen. So yes, if the inspection is submitted back, they would see only deficiency icons. They would not see previous answers dispatched out. This was a great webinar. I hope you guys all found this as helpful. Um, Great questions. Really, really great questions. I hope that all of our webinars this whole year in 2021 have great questions like we've had today. They're really great, like I said, great questions, and stuff to really make us think about. While this multi-tech feature is new, and just like most of the features and items that are part of our product, it's getting feedback from users, right? Things that we may not have thought about when developing this part of the product or this feature, and conversations like we've had today, even though it's been a lot of me talking and I haven't gotten to hear all your lovely voices, um, these are all things that are going to help us make the product better. And the suggestions and sort of the conversations that we've had around, well, what if there's multiple notes? How do we know what's come back? Is recommendations going to be the same? How are we going to collect all the photos? One technician might take great photos, and the other one might be like, ooh, what are you doing with your iPad while you're taking that photo? It's all blurry, and you don't want to use that tech's photos. You want to use the other tech. How do you get that information? How do you build up the best inspection report? How do you keep the information that you need, that's most valuable? So on behalf of the entire team, I would like to thank all of you for being here today and for this amazing conversation that we've had, these great questions. I do promise to get um, answers to your questions in your follow-up email tomorrow that will have the recording of this webinar attached to it. If any other questions do come up, please, 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 please do not hesitate to reach out to either the support channel at support@inspectpoint.com, or like I said, you feel free to email me. If I do forward it to support, please don't be offended. Like I said, it's just because I know I'm going to be super busy and I'm not going to be able to get back to you, and I'd like someone to get back to you sooner than I will be able to. So with that said, I'd like to thank you also again for a great first webinar. This is a great kickoff to 2021's webinar series. And like I said, anything else comes up, please let me know. I will follow up with all of you on this. And if you want this feature enabled, make sure to email support@inspectpoint.com and we will get that set up for you. So with that said, this is the completion of the webinar, and I hope all of you have a great rest of your day. Thanks again.